Should you help your kids financially, or should you protect your retirement? I recently saw a stat that 72% of parents feel a little guilty about some of the parental decisions that they've made. Therefore, they overcontribute to helping their kid out financially. Now, I'm not saying this represents you, but what I will say is I see this all the time. Whether we're talking about a 529 account for school, or just helping a kid get off their feet or get off the ground after they graduate from school, a lot of times parents do contribute more than they need to simply because they feel guilty or they feel that they should. Now, at the same time, I'm not saying that you should never help your kid out. In fact, we're going to give a couple of examples of both today. In today's video, I just want to share with you some reasons why you might not help your kid out financially, some reasons why you would think about doing so, and I ultimately want to wrap all of it up in explaining how your values and your upbringing play a role in this, and I think that'll help the conversation that you have with your significant other in this very important family decision to make. So before then, I know that parenting and financial decisions around your kids is a tricky balance. Being a parent myself, being a husband myself, it is a very delicate dance. So I'm not here to give you advice, just things to think about. So with that said, let's jump right into the first thing, which is talking about how your values and how your upbringing is going to play a significant role in this. Because one of the most common phrases I hear all the time in thinking about what to do for financial support of children is, well, my parents did X, therefore I'm going to do that for my kid. And something I can say about today's world is we would absolutely do better to carry on values that our parents and our grandparents had before us. I hope that goes without saying. But what I will say is to me, in certain situations, that logic is very surface level. If you think of your specific situation, using a principle simply because that's how it's always been done may not always make the most sense. In fact, it might end up holding you back. From my experience, there are three major fears that I normally see play out when it comes to supporting your son or daughter or even your grandchild with money. And the first is, hey, if I give them this money, they're going to be lazy, they're not going to know hard work, and they're going to become dependent on me. And that's the worst thing that I want, right? And that's very valid. Second thing is, hey, I really don't know if I can financially afford to help them out. And again, that's very valid as well. In fact, I'll give you an example here at the end when we talk about retirement, where that actually played a strong role. Final one, and this again ties into values, is if I give them money, they're not going to appreciate, they're not going to understand what it took to earn that. They're going to think it's as easy as you call mom and dad or you text mom and dad and they send you money, and that's not something I want to instill in them. Again, valid. All three of these are valid. What I'm saying here is that if you apply these across the board without further consideration, sometimes you might be holding yourself back and you could be hurting them more than you actually know. So here are a couple things that I've seen play out should you choose to withhold money from your son or daughter. And the first is going to be where they go to school. And I'm not saying that community schools are bad, or that if your son or daughter doesn't go to an Ivy League school, or they don't go to the greatest school in the state, that they're ultimately going to end up with a worse job, or that even some less expensive schools aren't the same quality as those schools, but they will have to either choose to go to a less expensive school, such as a community college for 2 years, or they're going to have to take on a student loan. And that is something that the banks in America are all too happy to provide to your son or daughter at a very helpful interest rate to the bank. But that's really the two options that they have. The third around school is your son or daughter is going to have to get a job part-time. Now, this can lead to stress, this can lead to late nights, this can lead to more poor grades than they otherwise would have, but ultimately, again, this is your decision. Something else that I actually see on a macro level that I'll sometimes bring up is this could potentially delay your son or daughter from starting a family. Now, I don't mean to get into the butterfly effect here, but I think we all see on a macro level that families in America are being started later than ever. And sure, it might be more than financial, but really that is one of the major contributing factors to whether or not a couple decides on starting a family or not, is if they can afford to do so. And if you do have the ability to help your son or daughter and you choose not to, something I have seen some couples in retirement later reflect on is they end up with a much higher number in retirement than they expected to have in terms of what their portfolio is currently at. And they just think, man, maybe I should have actually given my son or daughter money earlier in life. I don't really need all this money now. It's sort of that time has passed. You can't go back and pay for something that's already gone. Or maybe I should have taken them on a better trip, or maybe I should have done, insert here. So to give you a personal story real fast, something that was near and dear to me was a way that our grandma helped us out a couple of years ago. After she passed away, she left us a small amount of money, And what we were able to do with that money is turn around and use part of it as a down payment for our first house. Now, I hope I don't sound entitled by saying that, but what I certainly am is grateful. I walk my dogs every single day, and when I get home, I see my house, and I'm just like, man, I'm so grateful for that, and my grandma is one of the main reasons that came to fruition a couple of years ago. So all of that to say, you never know where, you never know how far a contribution to your son or daughter might go, or how things will play out. But now let's address the elephant in the room, and that's your retirement. That's comparing your retirement to helping your kid out financially. So like I sort of got to at the start of this video, a lot of times when I meet with parents and they discuss this amongst themselves or with me, they often feel the need to justify it to myself or to whoever they're speaking with if the conclusion of retirement versus their kids is their retirement. And ultimately, I'm here to say, one, you don't need to justify anything. It's your money. And two, oftentimes it is the most responsible move to make because someone is going to have to fund your lifestyle in retirement. If something were to happen to you medically, if something were to happen to your living expenses, like where you need to live, that needs to be covered by someone. The other thing I'll mention is the money that you provide your son or daughter today, sure, it can go a long way and it does matter. But what's going to be more important here, again, I'll tie the values back in, is their values and their skills. So I always give the example, if you give a man a fish, he'll be full for a while, but if you teach him to fish, he'll be full forever. And that's what I think skills and values represent in this conversation. And I know a lot of the people that we work with despise debt, and maybe rightfully so, but not all debt is necessarily the worst thing in the world. Now, student loans are very impactful to a couple, especially early on in their marriage. But something I will say about a student loan is hopefully they get a degree that matters, they move on to a job that earns more than they would have without that degree, and they're able to pay it off. A car loan, that's another common one. Hopefully they're driving that car to a job that pays them well, so that ultimately that they can pay that car off, or they can buy their next car in cash. Finally, a mortgage. Like I said, mortgages, houses, they have a lot of meaning to people, so hopefully they're filling memories in that household that are priceless. I think bottom line of what I'm saying here is you don't need to necessarily save the day in every situation, but as I'm kind of alluding to further and further in this video, it's all about a balance when it comes to financial management with children. Now, last thing here, let me give you a specific case study, an example that we just had last week with a couple in their late 40s. They have 2 kids. They currently have a little over $500,000 saved for retirement. And we were thinking out this exact topic. In fact, that's why I'm making the video. They have money saved in between 2 401ks and a brokerage account, a small brokerage account. And they're thinking about whether they need to contribute to a brokerage account, whether they should up their contributions to their 401k, or if they should be contributing more to their 529s that are currently not enough to get both of their kids through college that start here in the next 18 months or so. For an example of what their projection showed them, keyword projection, their projection, so this might not be your case, this is what we found. If they covered absolutely nothing, okay, they covered nothing at all, their retirement confidence score was at 93%. So if they retired 1,000 times, 930 of those, they got to the end and met their goals. If they covered everything, if they used that 529 and they used cash to cover the remaining portion of both of their kids' schools, which I should say for this average, we're saying $30,000 per year, their retirement confidence score dropped to 53%. Okay, as good of a chance of getting to the end of retirement where they wanted to, as much as not getting to that point. So where we sort of settled at was if they used those 529 funds and they were able to meet half of the current tuition costs per year for their kids, the score stayed at 83%. So still not the 93%, not a sure thing, as nothing in life is, but definitely a much greater balance there. We found a way to add intentionality and to be focused with their efforts in terms of how they're going to pay for college, but also give to their retirement without throwing one out of order. So the ultimate takeaway, I hope, from this video is that you don't have to choose between one or the other, but in the same way, there's gonna be no black and white answer here, and there's really no right or wrong decision. Like I said, I'm a parent, I'm a husband, so I know that a lot of these decisions are more of an art than a science, as they say. But I hope this video has been helpful for you to bring about some conversations with your financial planner or with your significant other or whoever you trust here. So as always, guys, thank you so much for your viewership. If you have future topics that you would like to see discussed, please let me know. But until then, have a good one.